Shadow Magic and Moonlight Vows. Prologue. 6 months ago. The door to Raphael's office closed behind her with a quiet click. Selene exhaled, slow and measured. The conversation had gone as well as it could have. No promises, no warmth, but permission, barely. Enough. She walked down the dim corridor, the scent of stone and ash in the air. Her mind was focused on strategy, diplomacy, survival, one step at a time. She turned the corner and saw him. The moment their eyes met, the world stopped. Her breath caught. Something ancient and wild unfurled in her chest like a storm rolling over calm sea. A tug, raw and magnetic, ripped through her center. Her pulse spiked. His gaze didn't waver, didn't soften. The bond snapped into place between them, unmistakable, unforgiving. Kian knew exactly what it was. What she was. What he had to do. His voice was cold, final. I reject you as my mate. Selene flinched, just barely, a blink, a sharp breath, but she recovered, swallowed, nodded. I see. The silence stretched, taut and cruel. Then she turned and walked away. And Kian let her go. Chapter 1. The moon hung low over Winter Hollow, half-veiled in mist, its pale light spilling across the stone floor of my chamber. I stood before the altar, crushing belladonna into a fine powder, the rhythmic grinding anchoring me. Precise, controlled, just like I had to be. The northern border wards pulsed weakly beneath my skin. Something, someone, was pressing against them again. Raphael had sent word an hour ago. Another disturbance. He requested reinforcement, and I agreed without hesitation. The Nightshade pack had honored their alliance with the Moonville Circle these past 2 months, ever since I helped lift the curse that had nearly severed Luca's bond with his fated mate. Trust had taken root between us, fragile but growing. Still, the cracks weren't in the alliance. They were in me. I drew in a steady breath, ignoring the ache that flared across my ribs, a wound long healed, but still sore beneath the surface. 6 months and 23 days since Kian rejected me. No warning, no explanation, just a single word, no. I pressed my thumb into the edge of the obsidian shard resting on the altar, letting it bite into my skin. The sharpness grounded me. Don't think about him. Don't think about. Too late. Kian's face burned behind my eyes, the way he'd looked at me, once, with something deeper than curiosity. Then the shift, the pulling away, the severing of something sacred. I clenched my jaw. I didn't ask for the bond. Neither of us did. But it was there, faded, ancient, unbreakable until he broke it. A quiet knock interrupted the spiral. Lyra stepped inside, her calm presence filling the room like warm rain. She was everything I wasn't, soft-spoken, grounded, loyal to a fault. We've gathered the supplies, she said gently. Rowan and the others are waiting. Thank you, I replied, carefully brushing the powdered herbs into a satchel. I'll be there shortly. Lyra didn't ask why I was stalling. She never did. She simply nodded and left, the door clicking softly behind her. I turned back to the altar, tracing the final salt sigil. A shimmer of warmth pulsed outward as the ritual settled into place. My hand lingered above the stone, fingers trembling just slightly. I hadn't cried when Kian walked away. I hadn't cried when he avoided my gaze at the High Council. I hadn't cried when I found out Maddie, his sweet, golden friend, was spending more and more time beside him. But when I discovered Maddie was Luca's mate, and that she and Kian had never shared a bond, something inside me cracked open. I didn't cry from pain. I cried from relief. Because it meant Kian hadn't left me for her. He hadn't chosen someone better. He had simply chosen not me. And somehow, that hurt more. I was the one who broke Melinda's curse. The one who spent 3 nights disentangling the dark threads binding Luca's fate. When he finally looked at Maddie and saw her, truly saw her, I felt joy. For them, for the healing, for the clarity. But still, the echo of the broken bond rang in me like a bell with no silence. Why? Why would a wolf reject their mate when it's sacred, when it's everything. I wasn't sick, I wasn't dark, my magic was whole. So why not me? The ritual circle was already half formed by the time I arrived. Rowan barely acknowledged me. Thea murmured updates while Maven arranged the crystals around the perimeter. Lyra stood watchfully near the edge. The wards are weakening faster, Thea said, brows drawn tight. It's not just passive pull, someone's probing for a breach. Then we hold the line, I said simply, stepping into the center. I began drawing sigils in powdered iron and rose ash, feeling the weave of magic slide into place. Familiar, comforting, mine. Until a runner burst into the room, breathless. A message, he said, bowing, from the Nightshade pack. I took the sealed parchment, already knowing the wax crest would bear the Nightshade insignia. I unfolded it quickly. Joint patrol requested. Meet at Northern Woods, midnight. Kian leads. My stomach twisted. Lyra, take over, I said too quietly. She blinked. You're going. I have to. She opened her mouth to protest, but I was already walking away. When I returned to my chamber, the door clicked shut behind me with a finality I hadn't expected. I leaned my forehead against it, breathing shallowly. 6 months and still, he haunted me. Not because I missed him, but because he'd looked at me like I was nothing, and part of me believed it. I slid down to the floor, knees to chest, pressing my fists against my eyes. No sobs, no screams, just silence. Because witches don't fall apart. And if they do, they sure as hell don't let anyone see.
Chapter 2. The morning sun spilled golden light across the packed clearing, waking the forest in gentle hues. I bounded into the open space, grinning wide as a group of younger wolves perked up at my arrival. Their eyes sparkled with excitement, and yes, a few of the younger females stole shy glances my way. Couldn't blame them. Who wouldn't like a mischievous, dimpled smile and a carefree attitude to lighten up the pack? All right, pups, who's ready to get schooled by the best beta around? I teased, stretching my arms with an exaggerated yawn. Come on, Kian, show us what you've got, one of the braver females challenged, a spark of mischief in her eyes. I laughed, locking eyes with her and giving a playful wink. Prepare to eat dirt, little wolf. The group erupted in cheers, and the training session kicked off with a flurry of energy. I tossed out light jabs and feints, letting them chase me, teasing and joking with the pups like a big brother who couldn't help but enjoy the chaos. From the sidelines, Luca watched quietly, his expression all serious lines and furrowed brows. He rarely smiled, but when he glanced at Maddie, I caught a softness in his eyes that betrayed his tough exterior. Unlike me, he wasn't about the loud charm or playful banter, but I admired that grounded strength. We balanced each other out, me the carefree spark, him the steady flame. Hey Luca, you gonna join us, or just keep looking like you're auditioning for the Brooding Wolf Award? I called, grinning. He didn't smile, but a faint chuckle escaped him. You're impossible. Yeah, but you love it, I shot back. After the drills, I caught them, Luca and Maddie, huddled close, whispering about their upcoming mating ceremony. It was the happiest I'd seen Luca in a long time. Maddie was sweet, gentle, and honestly, seeing her with Luca stung more than I wanted to admit. I tried to shove the feeling down. After all, I was the one who rejected Selene. Once, but wolves take mate bonds seriously, and the hardest pain wasn't from turning her away. It was knowing I'd lost something real, something I never got to have. That sting stayed buried deep inside me, even when I tried to ignore it. When training wrapped, I made my way to Raphael's office. As I approached, I spotted Selene standing near the window. Calm, composed, too composed. Our eyes met, and something cold and sharp flickered between us, a pulse of the bond I'd pushed away. The memory of that day flashed, her face breaking just for a second when I rejected her, then snapping back into strength before she silently left. No one else knew about our bond, not even Raphael, and I intended to keep it that way, not because I didn't trust them, but because I wasn't ready to face the truth myself. Raphael's voice brought me back. Kian, come in. Inside, his baby daughter was sprawled on a soft rug, giggling as I made goofy faces to entertain her. Even the alpha's serious office softened with that sound. She's a handful, Raphael said with a tired smile, scooping the little one into his arms, but she keeps me grounded. I nodded, smiling. Kids have a way of doing that. Then business. We've had reports of strange activity at the northern border. Magical disturbances, unusual tracks. I want you to team up with Selene to investigate. I glanced at Selene, steady, calm, but I could see the fire underneath. Despite everything, she'd been an incredible ally, strengthening the pack's defenses time and again. "Consider it done," I said with a confident grin, though inside, my wolf growled with the knowledge this wasn't just any patrol. Leaving the office, the bond tugged at me, the weight of my rejection still heavy. I hated this fate, hated the way I'd hurt Selene, but right now, the pack and keeping the fragile piece came first. Maybe one day, I'd find the courage to face her properly. Chapter 3. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when we set out toward the northern border. The pack was restless, and so was I, though not for the usual reasons. Everyone else chatted, joked, or snarled at the cold air. But beside me, Selene was a quiet island of calm, her presence as steady as the ancient trees lining our path. With others, I was easygoing, a tease, a jokester, the kind of guy who could disarm tension with a grin or a well-timed joke. But around Selene, something different twisted inside me. I kept catching her scent, a cool, almost hypnotic fragrance that stirred my wolf in ways I couldn't control. It was maddening. Every time her perfume mixed with the pine-scented breeze, my heart beat faster, pupils dilated, and my breath hitched. She walked with her usual composed grace, her dark hair falling in soft waves around a face that was sharp and elegant, high cheekbones, a straight nose, and full lips that rarely smiled but always held a trace of something fierce beneath. Her eyes were the kind that could pierce through lies, a deep shade of stormy gray that seemed to hold secrets and strength in equal measure. Beautiful, dangerous, and impossibly out of reach. I kept my distance, stubborn and cold on the surface, but inside my wolf howled with frustration. The mate bond was relentless, a silent scream between us that no one else could hear, and no one else needed to know. I couldn't let anyone see how much that scent, that presence, drove me mad. And Selene, she never looked my way, never faltered, strong, unshaken, as if she carried a secret strength even when the world around us threatened to crumble. We trudged on, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire, neither willing to reach out first, both shackled by pride and pain.
Chapter 4. The chill in the northern forest seeped into my bones as we moved quietly between the towering pines, their frost-covered branches scraping softly against the sky. The snow muffled our footsteps, the only sound the faint crunch of ice beneath our boots. Kian walked ahead, his figure sharp against the white landscape. With others, he was radiant, his dimpled smile lighting up his handsome face, those clear blue eyes sparkling with mischief and warmth. But with me, he was a different man entirely. No smile, no warmth, just cold, distant silence that cut deeper than any blade. I kept my gaze fixed on the cracked, magical sigils etched into the ancient stones marking the northern border. The ward here had been shattered, its protective energy flickering like a dying flame. As a witch and leader of the Ravencrest Coven, it was my responsibility to assess the damage and the danger. I knelt beside the broken ward, tracing the glowing cracks with a careful finger. The magic here was dark, precise, crafted by a skillful hand. This wasn't the crude, reckless power of the Iron Fang or rogue mages. No, this was something far older, far more terrifying. Kian crouched beside me, his blue eyes narrowing in thought. "This is no ordinary breach," he murmured, voice low but steady. I nodded, my mind racing. It's dark magic, Kian, old, twisted, and focused. Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. We shared a brief, charged look, both understanding the gravity of what lay ahead. Though he stayed silent, I knew he felt it too, the pull of this ancient power that threatened to unravel the fragile peace we'd fought so hard to build. Later, back at the command hall, I found Luca and Raphael waiting. The tension from the woods hadn't left me, and I wasted no time. "This dark magic at the border, it's more dangerous than we first thought," I said plainly. "The ward was shattered by something ancient and powerful. It's not just a simple attack." Luca's brow furrowed, his usual stoicism broken by a rare flicker of concern. Raphael leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We need to coordinate if we're going to stand a chance," I added, casting a glance toward the door, half expecting the wolf to appear. Raphael nodded slowly. "Good, we can't afford secrets right now." I allowed myself a brief, weary breath. The burden of leadership weighed heavy, but it was nothing compared to the storm gathering in my heart. The Ravencrest Coven's sanctum was heavy with quiet urgency. Flickering candlelight danced on the ancient stone walls, illuminating herbs and crystals meticulously arranged around the room. I knelt at the center, fingers weaving delicate strands of silver and wolfbane into a glowing circle of protection, a charm designed to shield us from the dark forces pressing on our borders. Lyra sat nearby, her eyes closed as she gently tuned into the subtle emotional currents lingering in the room. Her empathic presence was a balm against the rising tension, though even she couldn't fully mask the unease we all felt. Rowan, the eldest of us, stood by the cracked window, tracing faint lines of magical residue still clinging to the northern boundary in his mind. "The ward was shattered," he said quietly, voice carrying the weight of decades. "Broken by dark magic we haven't seen in generations, powerful, ancient. It took weeks of ritual, channeling every ounce of our strength to restore it, but it's fragile." Maven, ever eager despite the looming threat, arranged fresh bundles of sage and ironwood along the perimeter of the sanctum. "It feels different this time," she said, eyes flickering with unease. "Like whatever broke the ward has returned or never truly left." Thea, silent until now, stepped forward and surveyed the freshly woven charm with a careful eye. Though quiet, her gaze betrayed her acute awareness of the stakes, her presence a steadying force for the group. I inhaled deeply, centering myself. "This protection charm will strengthen the ward and extend its reach," I said, my voice firm despite the knot tightening in my chest. "It's not just about guarding the border anymore. We need to protect every member of this coven and the wolves who depend on our magic." As I traced the final sigils, the charm began to hum softly, a resonance of ancient power revived by our hands. It was a fragile hope, forged in the face of shadows that sought to unravel everything we'd built. Rowan nodded solemnly. "We must remain vigilant. The old magic is stirring again, and this charm is only the beginning." Lyra opened her eyes, a rare softness in her empathic gaze. "We're stronger together," she whispered, and I believed her. The room fell into a purposeful silence, the unspoken pact clear. The Ravencrest coven would stand unbroken, no matter the darkness looming beyond our borders. Chapter 5. 6 years ago. The night was colder than I remembered, biting through my skin like shards of ice. But it wasn't just the chill, it was the look in their eyes that haunted me. Not hatred, not fear. Purpose. My own coven, the ones who called themselves family, had never seen me as one of them. Not truly. Since the moment I was born, whispers clung to me like shadows. "She is touched by the moon," they murmured, "marked by something greater." Seers spoke of a prophecy, their voices hushed beneath the blood moon's glare, a child of storm and flame, born to shift the balance. People said I was special, but it never felt like a blessing. It felt like a burden, like a warning. "Her power is different," they said behind half-closed doors. Too different, too dangerous. They never hurt me, they never raised a hand. But they never held me with warmth either. I was trained, watched, guarded, not for my safety but for theirs. I thought they feared what I might become. But I was wrong. They hoped I would become it. They needed me for something dark, something ancient, something buried beneath Raven Hollow that only my blood could unlock. The night I found out, I followed the High Matron into the catacombs. What I saw, the ritual, the captives, the twisted magic, shattered the illusion of everything I had known. And I saw my mother, the High Priestess. They didn't want to destroy me. They wanted to use me. To twist my power into a weapon. "You're the key," she said, her voice like velvet over poison. "You were never meant to be just one of us. You are meant to lead us into the next age." But it wasn't a future I could be part of. So I ran. I broke the sigils that bound me to the coven. I tore through the wards, pushed past the familiar faces I'd once called kin, their eyes no longer cold, but burning with the heat of desperation. They didn't want me dead. They wanted me back. But I vanished into the night, a ghost of the girl they thought they could mold. Alone, betrayed, but no longer blind. From that night onward, I vowed to build something different, A coven not born of control and manipulation, but of choice and truth. Ravencrest Coven.
Chapter 6. I lingered just outside Raphael's office, pretending to be occupied while catching snippets of Selene's voice inside. Calm, steady, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. The attacks at the northern border weren't random, Selene said firmly. It's dark magic, old, dangerous, and deliberate. Someone's trying to weaken us from within. Raphael's voice lowered. The ward was restored, but it's not holding. Selene shook her head. The ward's back, yes, but the magic that broke through it's powerful. My coven has created protection charms, each tailored to every coven member and allied wolves. These charms will shield against enchantments, curses, and influence. With the new moon coming, it's the only way to keep us safe. She held up a small charm, its silver surface pulsing faintly, almost alive. Raphael's eyes softened with gratitude. Selene, your coven's support is invaluable. Tomorrow is Luca and Maddie's mating ceremony, which will occupy much of the pack. Because of that, I need your coven to take charge of guarding all the borders. My pack members will rotate patrols and assist when possible. He glanced at me. Kian, Iris will join you on patrol. Selene nodded without hesitation. We will do what's necessary. As she gathered her things, our eyes met, brief, electric, full of unspoken things. I saw the exhaustion behind her composed face, the guardedness she tried to mask. I stepped closer, voice low. You need to rest. She offered a polite nod, the formality between us thick and painful. I'll rest when this is over. The distance she maintained stung worse than I expected, but it was my doing. Chapter 7. The forest was quieter than usual. Not empty, never truly that, but hushed, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, aware of what today meant for the pack. A mating ceremony always carried weight, but Luca and Maddie, they were the heart of this place. Their union wasn't just symbolic, it was binding. I should have been there, should have stood beside Luca as his second, flanked him with loyalty and pride. Instead, I was patrolling the outer edge of the territory, shoulder to shoulder with witches I didn't trust. Raphael had asked Selene to reinforce the borders during the ceremony. With so many of our fighters focused on the gathering, the territory was vulnerable. A few pack members, myself, Iris, 2 others, had volunteered to guide and guard the witches while they worked. Selene's coven moved through the forest with purpose, laying down charms and sigils, their magic humming low and sharp through the air. I didn't speak unless I had to. Selene didn't try to force words from me either. She was precise, professional, focused. Still, every now and then, I'd feel her glance shift toward me, quiet, thoughtful, like she was trying to figure me out. Good luck. I didn't even know who the hell I was half the time. We stopped near the eastern ridge where the trees grew dense and the air always felt colder. One of the witches, a younger girl with silver ink on her hands, paused, her fingers trembling just slightly. Selene moved beside her, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. Go slow, feel the earth, it'll guide you. The girl nodded and refocused. I leaned against a tree nearby, arms crossed. Selene walked toward me once the girl was working again. She kept a polite distance. Thank you, she said softly, for being here. I didn't respond. After a moment, she added, you could have been with the others, at the ceremony. Didn't feel like celebrating, I muttered. A silence stretched between us. I finally glanced at her. They trust your magic. She nodded, and you don't. Another beat. No, I said, I don't. She didn't flinch. That's fair. She didn't ask why. That surprised me. Most witches I'd met would have pushed, demanded, tried to prove themselves with sweet words or false humility. But Selene, she let it lie. That earned her more respect than I wanted to admit. As the last charm was anchored in place and the energy settled, Selene exhaled. I noticed the fatigue in her movements, the barely there shake in her fingers, the pale strain around her eyes. She was holding more than just magic together. You okay? I asked, despite myself. She looked at me, a beat past. No, she said quietly, but I will be. When we returned to the pack grounds, twilight had painted the sky in soft blues and dying golds. Music drifted from the central clearing, laughter, drums, the warm buzz of life. Maddie and Luca stood in the center, hands entwined, surrounded by lanterns and petals and family. They were smiling, safe, loved. I stayed in the shadows beneath the trees, watching from a distance. A ghost, half in the world, half outside of it. Luca caught my eye across the clearing. He raised a brow, a quiet question, "Why didn't you come earlier?" I held his gaze a moment, then offered a slight nod. His jaw tensed, but he let it go. He always did. He hated secrets, I hated having them. But I couldn't tell him what I'd seen. Couldn't say the reason I knew how to fight like I did wasn't training, it was survival. That I'd been hunted before. That I'd killed to keep myself and others alive. That I didn't sleep through the night because when I did, I heard a witch's voice whispering promises that ended in blood. So I told him what I told everyone. My family chose to be alone. That was true. I just didn't say why I left them. Later that night, when the last song faded and most had gone to sleep, I found myself near the warded line again, just to be sure. Selene was there too. No magic this time, just her, seated on a stone, breathing in the silence. She looked up when I approached. I didn't say anything. But after a minute, I sat beside her. We didn't speak. Didn't have to. Sometimes quiet says more than words ever could. Chapter 8. The cold taught me two things, how to survive and how to forget. Most days I pretend the latter works. I wasn't born into a pack. My parents chose the lone life before I ever took my first breath, not because they were outcasts, not because they were hunted, but because they believed freedom was strength. The pack system, they said, was full of leashes masquerading as loyalty. They believed in raising wolves who didn't need anyone but blood. And for a while, I believed them too. Until blood wasn't enough. I had a brother, Dane, and a sister, Nara. They were the best of us, quick, curious, full of light. Dane could find his way through any forest before his voice even cracked. Nara could calm a wild hare just by sitting near it. They trusted too easily. That was their mistake. The witch came when I was 14. Alone, or so it seemed. Wounded, she said. My parents debated, but in the end, they let her stay in our territory for the night. My mother said it was the right thing to do. My father said it was a test of strength, that if she tried anything, we would handle it. They didn't. We didn't. She didn't attack us with blades or fire. She smiled, she sang, she whispered. By the time we realized, she was pulling something from the ground, dark old magic. It was too late. She marked my siblings, said they were special, said she was giving them a gift. We didn't see the signs until Dane started waking up screaming, clawing at his own chest, until Nara began forgetting her own name, speaking in words that didn't sound like her own. My parents stood frozen, like they didn't know what to do. They were wolves who had prepared for every kind of physical war. But they had no weapons for this kind. And they did nothing. They watched their children unravel. I did what they wouldn't. I followed the witch one night when she left our camp, watched her performing whatever ritual she thought we were too dumb to notice. I waited until her guard was down. And then I killed her. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't righteous. It was angry, bloody, desperate. But it wasn't enough. Dane died a day later. Nara forgot who I was the next week. She's still alive somewhere. My parents keep her hidden, like if they closed the door on that part of our lives, it never happened. They pretended everything was fine. And I couldn't stand the sight of them after that. I left. Not in anger, in silence. I didn't want revenge, I didn't want purpose. I wanted peace. I trained on my own. I hunted, bled, learned to channel every ache in my bones into strength. Pain became precision, fury became control. The kind of control that unnerves people when I smile. Years passed. Eventually, I wandered toward a quiet town tucked near the pine woods. I thought maybe I'd settle there for a bit, no trouble, no history, just a place where I could be invisible. But I caught the scent of wolves. Not rogues, not loners. Pack. It should have made me walk away, but I stayed. I watched from the shadows. I listened. There was something about the way they moved, not like they were following orders, but like they trusted the one leading them. It reminded me of something I'd never had. Something I didn't know I needed until then. I met Luca first, he didn't trust me. Smart guy. I told him the truth, partially. That I was from a lone family who still lived that way, that I wanted something different, that I was tired of wandering. He didn't push, but I saw the question in his eyes. He still has it. Raphael was less guarded. He looked at me like he already saw what I could be. Maybe that's why I've stayed this long. But I never told them what really happened. Not about the witch, not about my siblings, not about the rage that still sits under my skin like a second heartbeat. Because secrets, I've learned, are safer than pity. I don't hate witches, not exactly. I just don't trust them. I can't. Not after what she did, not after what my family let happen. That's why I keep my distance from Selene. Not because I think she's like the witch from my past, but because something about her makes me want to believe again. And that's what makes her the most dangerous of all.
Chapter 9. The eastern ridge was shrouded in shadows, the trees thick and knotted like a protective barrier around us. The air held a bite, cold and sharp, as if warning us to tread carefully. Around me, the younger witches worked with focused hands, weaving delicate threads of magic into the earth to strengthen our border. One of them faltered, her fingers trembling with uncertainty, and I stepped closer, grounding her with a soft touch on her shoulder. Go slow. Feel the earth. It will guide you. She drew a deep breath and steadied herself, the silver ink tracing faintly over her hands, glowing in the dim light. But my eyes kept drifting to Kian. He stood apart, leaning against a tree, arms crossed tight over his chest, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. There was always a distance around him, a fortress of walls built from past scars and hard-earned caution. Yet tonight, beneath that shield, I sensed something different, something raw and vulnerable trying to break through the surface. When the younger witch regained her focus, I finally approached Kian, keeping a careful distance. I wanted to reach out to bridge the space between us, but the fear of rejection held me back. Instead, I offered a quiet, "Thank you for being here." No answer, just silence, the kind that presses into your skin and makes you ache. I tried again, gently mentioning the ceremony happening without him. I could feel the shift, the weight of his words when he said he didn't feel like celebrating. There was a storm behind those few words, a guardedness that both intrigued and pained me. He looked at me then, eyes dark and honest. "They trust your magic." I nodded, hoping to convey more than just acceptance. But then came the truth he didn't want to say outright, the wound he carried silently between us. "And you don't." I saw the hesitation flash across his face before he finally admitted it. And when he did, I felt a sting, sharp, unexpected. Not because I was hurt by the lack of trust, but because I understood. I understood all too well what it meant to be doubted, to be feared, to be cast aside even by those who should stand beside you. But I held my composure. I didn't press him for reasons. I didn't demand his trust with empty promises or forced smiles. I let the silence hang heavy, thick with what we wouldn't say. That moment between us was charged, like a live wire stretched taut. I could feel the undercurrent of something deeper, something neither of us wanted to admit. A pull, magnetic and undeniable, drawing me closer even as he pulled away. His distrust wasn't just a wall. It was a wound I wanted to heal, but I wasn't sure if I had the strength to reach him through it, or if he even wanted to be reached. The ache of that unspoken yearning, of the space between us filled with everything we were afraid to say, it stayed with me long after the others had moved on. Because despite it all, his coldness, his distance, the shadows in his eyes, I was drawn to him, pulled like a moth to a flame that threatened to burn me. And I didn't know if I was ready to let it consume me. Chapter 12. The council chamber was thick with tension, bodies pressed close as every member of the pack and coven gathered. I stood beside Raphael at the center, the wooden table between us littered with maps of our territory. Candles cast long shadows across worried faces. "The breach was deliberate," I said, tracing my finger along the eastern border where we'd found the ward destroyed. "They weren't just testing our defenses, they were sending a message." Raphael's eyes narrowed. "What kind of message?" "That they can reach us whenever they want." I met his gaze, not hiding the gravity in my voice. That our magic isn't enough. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear had a scent, sharp and acrid, and it filled the room like smoke. Diana stepped forward, Christine half hidden behind her. If this is Crimson Howl's work, they'll come for leadership first. For Raphael, for Luca, for Kian. Her voice remained steady despite the tremor in her hands. For our daughter. I watched as Kian shifted uncomfortably across the table, his eyes fixed on the map, but his attention clearly on Christine. Something in his posture had changed since yesterday, less guarded, more determined. "We need to establish a rotation," he said finally, voice cutting through the whispers. 4 guards minimum on Christine at all times, 2 wolves, 2 witches. Surprised murmurs followed his words. It wasn't like Kian to suggest working so closely with my coven. "That's actually a sound plan," I agreed, trying to hide my surprise. "My strongest witches can alternate with your best fighters." Raphael nodded slowly. "And what about the borders? We can't leave them vulnerable." "We won't," I assured him. "I've been working on something, a different kind of protection." I hesitated, aware of the risk in what I was about to propose. "It's old magic, drawn from blood and earth." Kian's head snapped up, eyes locking with mine. "Blood magic!" The distrust was back, etched into every line of his face. "Not dark magic," I clarified quickly. "But powerful. It requires sacrifice, not of life, but of strength. Each witch gives a little, creating something no single witch could maintain alone." The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of their judgment, their fear. "It would protect everyone," I said softly. "Not just Christine." Diana stepped forward, her shoulders squared. "I'll help, whatever it takes." One by one, members of my coven nodded their agreement. Then, unexpectedly, Kian spoke. "I'll join the first rotation," he said, his voice low but carrying across the quiet room. His eyes met mine briefly. "If you'll have me." The offer stunned me. Just yesterday, he'd barely trusted my magic, and now he was volunteering to work directly with it. "Of course," I managed, forcing my voice to remain neutral despite the strange flutter in my chest. As the meeting dispersed, Kian lingered behind. I could feel his presence, solid and warm, as I gathered my notes. "This blood magic," he said quietly, "it'll drain you." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." "Then you'll need help." His hand brushed mine as he reached for one of the maps, and I fought the urge to lean into the touch. "Someone to watch your back while you're vulnerable." I looked up, finding his eyes, dark, intense, but lacking the suspicion I'd grown accustomed to seeing there. "Are you offering?" I asked, careful to keep my tone light. His lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Maybe I am." Before I could respond, Raphael called for him from across the room. Kian stepped back, nodding once before turning away. I watched him go, unable to shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The wall he'd built so carefully was beginning to crack. And I wasn't sure if that terrified or thrilled me more.
Chapter 13. Dawn painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold as I patrolled the northern boundary, every sense alert. 3 days had passed since the ward breach, and the entire territory now hummed with a strange energy the new magic Selene and her coven had woven into the earth. I didn't like it, this unfamiliar power that made my skin prickle, but I understood its necessity. Ahead of me, Christine skipped along the path, collecting smooth stones for some game she'd invented. Despite all our precautions, she remained stubbornly unafraid, her childish innocence somehow undimmed by the danger. Diana walked beside her, watchful as always. "Kian," Christine called, holding up a rock shaped like a crescent moon, "for your collection." I accepted it with a solemn nod, tucking it into my pocket. Her grin lit up her entire face. "That's your 3rd gift this morning," Diana observed, a tired smile softening her worried expression. "She's taken quite a liking to you." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the fondness in her voice. "Just doing my job." "Is that why you volunteered for double shifts?" There was a knowing edge to her question. Before I could answer, Selene emerged from the tree line, looking exhausted but resolute. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of the toll the new protection spells were taking. Still, she smiled when she saw Christine, kneeling to admire the child's growing pile of treasures. Something tightened in my chest at the sight. "Any sign of trouble?" I asked as she approached, keeping my voice neutral. She shook her head. "Nothing yet." Her eyes scanned the horizon. "But that doesn't mean they're not watching." "Who do you think they are?" I kept my voice low enough that Christine couldn't hear. "Really?" Selene hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. "I wish I knew. The magic signature isn't like anything I've encountered before, but it feels deliberate, personal. Like they know us." "Like they know magic," she corrected. "They bypassed rather than broke through. That takes knowledge, intimate knowledge of how wards work." I studied her face, the shadows under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "You're not telling me everything." She met my gaze steadily. "Neither are you." The standoff lasted only seconds before Christine bounded over, breaking the tension. "Selene, can you make the pretty lights again?" she asked, eyes wide and hopeful. Diana stepped forward quickly. "Christine, Selene needs to rest, the magic." "It's all right," Selene interrupted with a gentle smile, "just a small one." She cupped her hands together, whispering words I couldn't catch. A soft blue glow bloomed between her palms, swirling into the shape of a tiny butterfly that fluttered up and circled Christine's delighted face. The magic was beautiful, pure and bright, nothing like the dark power I'd seen witches wield before, nothing like the curse that had taken my family. As Christine chased the light butterfly, I found myself watching Selene. The genuine joy on her face as she entertained the child contradicted everything I'd been taught to believe about witches. "She reminds me of myself," Selene said quietly, following my gaze to Christine, "before everything changed." "What happened?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Pain flickered across her face, quickly masked. "That's a story for another time." Before I could press further, a howl cut through the morning air, urgent, warning. In an instant, Diana had scooped Christine into her arms, and I moved to position myself between them and potential danger. "East border," I growled, already shifting my weight to run. "Someone's testing the wards again." Selene's expression hardened, the playful witch replaced by something fierce and determined. "Go, I'll stay with them." I hesitated, torn between duty to the pack and the need to protect what was right in front of me. "Trust me, Kian," she said, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that left no room for doubt. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I did. "Stay inside the inner ward line," I instructed, already moving. "If anything happens, anything at all, call for me." Her nod was all I needed before I took off toward the border, my wolf clawing at the surface, eager to break free. Behind me, I heard her begin to cast, the familiar cadence of her voice fading as distance grew between us. Trust, I realized as I ran, was a dangerous thing to give a witch. More dangerous still was how badly I wanted to give her mine.
Chapter 14. The eastern ward had been breached again, more violently this time. Trees lay splintered along the boundary, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes as if tortured by invisible hands. The earth itself was scorched black, and the bitter scent of burnt magic hung heavy in the air. "This is escalating," I murmured, crouching to examine the damage. My fingers traced the charred soil, and a jolt of familiar energy shot through me, powerful, ancient, and unsettlingly familiar in a way I couldn't place. Raphael stood beside me, his posture rigid with barely contained fury. "They're toying with us." "Testing our response time," Kian added, his keen eyes scanning the tree line. "Seeing how quickly we mobilize, how we organize our defenses." I nodded, rising slowly. Whoever they are, they're patient, strategic. "But what do they want?" Luca voiced the question hanging unspoken between us all. "Only if we knew that," I said. An image of Christine's bright smile flashed through my mind. The thought of it dimming, of that innocence shattered, made my chest ache. As the others discussed reinforcements and patrol schedules, I moved deeper into the damaged area, drawn by something I couldn't quite name. At the center of the destruction, half hidden beneath a fallen branch, lay a small stone carved with an unfamiliar sigil. The moment my fingers touched it, visions exploded behind my eyes, a circle of robed figures, a ritual blade cutting through flesh, power surging wild and uncontrolled. I pulled back with a gasp, heart pounding. "What is it?" Kian had appeared at my side, his warmth a steadying presence against the cold dread seeping through me. I hesitated, then held out the stone. A message, but I don't understand it yet. He didn't touch it, but his eyes narrowed as he studied the marking. What kind of witch leaves calling cards? The kind who wants to be found, I replied softly, or who wants us to know we've been found. Later that evening, as twilight painted shadows across the clearing, I sat alone in my cabin, the mysterious stone placed carefully on the table before me. I'd tried every revealing spell I knew, but the sigil remained stubbornly enigmatic. A knock at the door pulled me from my contemplation. I wrapped the stone in a protective cloth before answering. Kian stood on my doorstep, shoulders tense, expression unreadable. Behind him, stars were beginning to pierce the darkening sky. "Any progress?" he asked, nodding toward the interior of my cabin. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter, a gesture of trust that wasn't lost on either of us. Nothing certain, but it's old magic, far older than anything I've worked with before. He moved with cautious grace around my space, eyes taking in the herbs hanging from the rafters, the bottles of potions lining my shelves. Things that would have earned his scorn just days ago. "Christine is asking for you," he said finally, turning to face me. "She says your protection spells work better when you tell her stories." A smile tugged at my lips despite the weight of the day. She's not wrong. Belief strengthens magic, especially in children. "Then you should come." He hesitated, then added, "Please." The word seemed to cost him something, a vulnerability I wasn't accustomed to seeing. I nodded, gathering my cloak. "I'll bring my grimoire. There's a spell I've been working on, something stronger for her specifically." As I reached for the book, a wave of dizziness swept over me. The constant drain of maintaining the border wards while crafting new protections was taking its toll. I stumbled, catching myself against the table. Kian moved faster than I thought possible, his arm around my waist, steadying me before I could fall. "You're pushing too hard," he said, voice rough with what might have been concern. I looked up, finding his face unexpectedly close to mine. "I don't have a choice." His eyes darkened. "There's always a choice, Selene." My name sounded different on his lips, softer somehow. "Not when it comes to protecting people I care about." I straightened, but didn't pull away from his support. "Would you choose differently?" Something passed across his face, recognition, perhaps, or resignation. "No, but I'm not burning myself out with magic." "No," I agreed, allowing a small smile. "You're just taking double shifts and refusing to sleep." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might almost have been a smile. "Touché, witch." We stood there for a moment, suspended in fragile understanding, before he reluctantly stepped back. As we walked together toward Raphael's cabin where Christine waited, I was acutely aware of the distance he maintained beside me, close enough to catch me if I faltered again, but never quite touching. It felt like progress, small, hesitant, but real. Yet as the lights of the main house came into view, I couldn't shake the feeling that something watched us from the shadows, patient, calculating, and growing bolder with each passing day.
Chapter 15. Another week passed in tense vigilance. No new breaches, but the silence felt more threatening than comfort, like the calm before a storm that would wash away everything in its path. I found Selene in the meadow behind her cabin, hands outstretched toward the sky, lips moving in silent incantation. The air around her shimmered with iridescent light, her magic weaving invisible patterns that made my skin tingle even from a distance. I waited until she lowered her arms before approaching. The exhaustion was etched deeper in her face with each passing day, but there was something else there too, a resolve that refused to bend. "You know," I said, stopping a few paces away, "most people rest when they're tired." She turned, unsurprised by my presence. "Most people aren't responsible for keeping an entire territory safe. Last I checked, that was Raphael's job, and mine." Her smile was thin but genuine. "And you're doing it admirably, but neither of you can fight magic with teeth and claws." I moved closer, studying the patterns she'd drawn in the dirt, complex symbols surrounding a central circle. "What's this?" "A contingency plan." She brushed a strand of hair from her face, leaving a smudge of earth across her cheek. If the wards fail completely, we'll need somewhere to fall back to. You think it will come to that? Her eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. I think we should be prepared for anything. The truth of her words settled heavily between us. I nodded, then gestured to the symbols. Show me how it works. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something warmer. You want to understand which magic now? I want to understand what we're up against. I hesitated, then added more quietly, and I want to understand you. She held my gaze for a long moment before nodding. It's a concentric protection spell, 4 rings, each with a different purpose. She pointed to the outermost circle. This one warns of approach, the next slows an enemy's advance, the third confuses and disorients. And the innermost. Her expression turned grim. That one kills, if necessary. I knelt beside the circles, examining the intricate patterns. You're not just protecting Christine, are you? This is bigger than what Raphael thinks. She tensed, then slowly sank to the ground across from me. The magic I felt at the breach, it wasn't just powerful, it was familiar in a way I can't explain. Her fingers traced one of the symbols absently, like a melody you've heard before but can't place. You think you know who's behind this? No, she shook her head firmly, but the magic knows me, somehow. I watched her face carefully, looking for signs of deception but finding only troubled confusion. Why haven't you told Raphael this? Because I don't understand it myself. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and because I'm afraid of what it might mean. The vulnerability in her admission struck me harder than I expected. Without thinking, I reached across the dirt circle and caught her hand in mine. Whatever it is, I said, my voice rough with an emotion I wasn't ready to name, you don't face it alone. Her fingers tightened around mine, warm and surprisingly strong. Careful, Wolf, that almost sounds like you trust me. Maybe I do. The words felt like a release, the acknowledgement of something that had been growing between us since that first night at the border. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken possibilities. I became acutely aware of her pulse against my fingers, the faint scent of lavender and pine that seemed to cling to her skin. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. Trust is dangerous in times like these. So is standing alone. Her eyes searched mine, looking for something I hoped she would find. Whatever she saw made her smile, a small, private thing that reached her eyes for the first time in days. The moment shattered as a howl cut through the air, urgent, panicked. We broke apart, both rising to our feet in one fluid motion. The eastern border again, I said, already turning toward the sound. Selene's face had gone pale. No, listen, that's Maddie. She's at the north point with Christine. Terror gripped me as I realized she was right. Without another word, we ran, abandoning the protection circles in the dirt. As we raced through the trees, the scent of smoke and burning magic grew stronger. Ahead, orange flames licked at the sky, consuming trees and undergrowth with unnatural speed. It's a diversion, Selene shouted over the roar of the fire. They're trying to split our forces. Even as she spoke, another howl rose from the direction of Raphael's cabin, where Christine should have been safe. I caught Selene's arm, forcing her to stop. Go to Christine, I'll handle this. She shook her head fiercely. The fire is magical, you can't fight it without me. Selene, I gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. Trust goes both ways. I'll find Maddie and get to the cabin. You deal with the fire before it reaches the heart of our territory. Conflict raged in her expression. Finally, she nodded. Be careful. Whatever this is, it's not just about territory anymore. I know. I hesitated only a second longer, then did something I'd never imagined doing. I pressed my forehead briefly against hers, an intimate gesture of my kind that meant more than words could say. Then I was running again, shifting as I moved, the wolf taking over with primal speed and power. Behind me, I heard Selene begin to chant, her voice rising above the crackling flames, commanding the fire to yield to her will. And for the first time in my life, I prayed that witch magic would be strong enough to save us all.
Chapter 16. The fire obeyed me reluctantly, fighting my control with a will of its own. This was no ordinary blaze. It had been conjured with malice, imbued with a stubborn sentience that resisted my commands. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I forced the flames to recede inch by painful inch. Bend, I whispered, then shouted as power surged through me. Bend. The fire wavered, hissed like a living thing, then finally began to shrink. I didn't wait for it to die completely before turning toward Raphael's cabin, my heart pounding with dread. The forest blurred around me as I ran, branches whipping past my face, roots threatening to catch my feet. The protective wards I'd placed around the territory were screaming in my mind, violated, broken, twisted into something unrecognizable. When I reached the clearing, I stumbled to a halt, horror freezing the breath in my lungs. The cabin still stood, but the ground around it was littered with bodies. Pack members lay scattered across the grass, some stirring weakly, others ominously still. Not dead, I could sense their life force, but trapped in some kind of magical sleep. Kian crouched over Maddie's unconscious form, his face a mask of cold fury. When he saw me, he rose in one fluid motion. "Christine," I asked, dreading the answer. "Safe, Diana got her out through the back." His voice was tight with controlled rage. "Raphael's tracking them now." Relief made my knees weak. What happened? "They were waiting for us to split up." He gestured to the fallen wolves. "Some kind of spell hit them all at once. Those closest to the cabin went down first." I knelt beside the nearest wolf, placing my hand on his forehead. Dark magic pulsed beneath his skin, tainted with a signature that made my blood run cold. "I know this spell," I whispered, memories stirring at the edge of my consciousness, shadows of a past I'd tried to forget. "I've seen it before." Kian's eyes narrowed. "Where?" Before I could answer, a howl pierced the night, Raphael calling for aid. "Go," I urged Kian. "I can help them, but it will take time. Christine needs you now." He hesitated, clearly torn between staying to protect the fallen and answering his alpha's call. "Trust me," I said again, the words becoming a talisman between us. After a heartbeat's pause, he nodded and took off toward the forest edge, shifting mid-stride into his wolf form, powerful and swift. As soon as he vanished into the trees, I returned my attention to the unconscious wolves. The spell binding them was complex but familiar, a variation of a sleeping curse I'd seen used once before, long ago, by. No, it couldn't be. I pushed the thought away, focusing instead on breaking the enchantment. One by one, I moved among the fallen, whispering counterspells, drawing the poisonous magic from their bodies into my own. Each extraction left me weaker, the borrowed darkness a weight in my chest. When the last wolf began to stir, I rose on shaky legs, my vision swimming with exhaustion. I needed to find Christine, to make sure the protection spells I'd woven specifically for her were still intact. I had barely taken 3 steps when a sound behind me made me turn. A figure stepped from the shadows at the forest's edge, tall and slender, wrapped in a dark cloak that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Though the face was hidden, I knew with bone-deep certainty who stood before me. "Hello, Selene." The voice was as smooth and cold as I remembered. "It's been a long time." My throat constricted, old fear and older pain rising like bile. "Morana." She pushed back her hood, revealing the face that had once been as familiar to me as my own, elegant features, pale eyes that held no warmth. Her silver hair gleamed in the moonlight, unaged by the decades since I'd seen her last. "You've built quite a life for yourself," she said, glancing around at the stirring wolves with contempt. "Hiding among animals, playing at protection spells. How quaint." I gathered what remained of my strength, preparing a defensive spell. "What do you want?" "Is that any way to greet your high priestess?" Her smile was sharp as a blade. "After all these years, I expected at least a proper bow." "You lost the right to my respect when you tried to bind my magic." I kept my voice steady despite the trembling in my limbs. "When you betrayed me." "Betrayed you?" She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Child, we were trying to save you from yourself, from the chaos inside you that would destroy everything it touched." Her gaze hardened. "Including, it seems, these creatures you've grown so fond of." Cold fear slithered down my spine. "What are you talking about?" "Your magic calls to magic, Selene. It always has." She gestured to the unconscious wolves. "Did you really think you could hide forever, that your power wouldn't draw attention, wouldn't draw us?" Understanding dawned, sickening and absolute. The attacks, the breaches, it was you. A necessary measure to assess the situation. She stepped closer, and I fought the urge to retreat. We've been watching for some time, waiting, learning how deep your attachment to these pets runs. Anger flared, hot and bright, burning away some of my exhaustion. They are not pets, they're my family. Family? Disgust twisted her perfect features. You were born to greater purpose than playing nursemaid to wolves, Selene. The power in your blood was meant for our coven, for the continuation of a lineage older than these forests. I want no part of that lineage. I stood my ground as she circled me slowly. I built something better, something honest. And yet, she murmured, stopping directly before me, here I am, drawn by the very magic you've been so carelessly flinging about. Her eyes narrowed. Did you think the child's protection wouldn't alert us? Magic that specific, that potent? It might as well have been a beacon. Christine, my heart stuttered. Stay away from her. The child doesn't interest me, except as a means to an end. She reached out, her fingertips stopping just short of my cheek. It's you we want, Selene. It's always been you. I jerked away from her almost touch. I won't go back, not ever. You misunderstand. Her smile turned pitying. This isn't an invitation, it's a reckoning. Before I could react, she flicked her wrist. Pain exploded in my head, driving me to my knees. Through watering eyes, I saw more cloaked figures emerging from the trees. 5, perhaps 6 of them, their faces obscured but their power unmistakable. My old coven. We'll be in touch, Morana said, her voice fading as darkness crept into the edges of my vision. Give my regards to your wolf, he seems devoted. The last thing I saw before consciousness slipped away was her triumphant smile, cold and satisfied, the smile of a predator who had finally cornered its prey.
Chapter 17. I found Selene collapsed among the awakening wolves, her skin cold as winter stone, her breathing shallow. No wounds marked her, but something worse clung to her like rot magic. Foreign, vicious, not meant to kill, only to break. Selene, her name caught in my throat. I dropped to my knees, pulling her against me. Selene, come on, look at me. Her eyelids fluttered, but her body remained limp. Her magic, usually a fierce and steady hum beneath her skin, felt fractured, fragile, like something torn from its root. My wolf stirred violently, pacing beneath the surface of my skin, snarling and desperate. He couldn't understand why she wasn't waking, couldn't bear it, neither could I. Luca appeared beside me, eyes dark. Raphael found Christine and Diana, safe, hidden downriver. And whoever did this. Gone, no trace, his jaw clenched. What happened to her? I don't know, the words tasted like blood. I'd left her. I thought she could handle it. I trusted her. No, I abandoned her. And now she lay broken in my arms. Get her inside, Luca said, already moving to help the others. I'll send for her second, the redhead. Lyra, I said. I stood, Selene cradled against my chest. She was too light, as if whatever had touched her hadn't just hurt her, but hollowed her. Inside Raphael's cabin, I laid her on the couch and threw logs into the hearth like a man possessed. I stoked the flames high, willing the heat to chase away the unnatural chill sinking into her bones. She didn't stir, her lips were blue, her skin pale and clammy. Don't do this, I whispered, clutching her hand in both of mine. Don't you dare leave now. The door flew open. Lyra rushed in, hair wild, eyes wide with dread. Move, she ordered, kneeling beside Selene without hesitation. Golden light flared between her fingers as she traced sigils over Selene's chest and forehead. Magic shimmered like dust in the air. What happened? Lyra demanded. Who touched her? I don't know. I went after Christine. She told me. You left her, she snapped. She said she could handle it. She would, Lyra's voice cracked with pain. Always the protector, never the protected. That phrase buried itself in my chest. I couldn't shake it. My wolf went still. I thought I could ignore her, resist her, walk away without consequence, but seeing her like this, so still, so wrong, ripped everything I believed to pieces. I can stabilize her, Lyra said, but this wasn't meant to kill her. I tensed, then what was it for? To weaken her, suppress her, drain her magic. She's been marked. Her magic pulsed faster, more urgent. This was old magic, personal, a summoning more like a pull than an attack. Pulling her where? Her eyes flicked to mine but gave nothing away. I don't know, I swear it. You do, I said quietly, but you're protecting her. She has her reasons, Lyra replied. If she wants you to know, she'll tell you herself. Before I could respond, Selene's body convulsed. Her back arched violently, her mouth opened on a silent scream, and her eyes flew open. Not amber. Silver, burning, unseeing. They're coming, she whispered in a voice that wasn't hers. The circle must be completed. Blood calls to blood. Lyra swore and slammed her palm to Selene's forehead. Fight it, Selene. You're stronger than them. What's happening? I demanded, helpless to do anything but watch. They're trying to pull her back. Whoever cast this wants her weakened, not dead. She's tied to them. They're calling her home. Selene's body writhed, caught between worlds, until Lyra's spellwork finally started to take hold. Slowly, painfully, the silver light drained from her eyes. She slumped, breath shallow, eyes fluttering shut. And then, miraculously, she opened them again. Amber, confused, alive. Kian, she whispered. I'm here. I reached for her hand, crushing it to my chest. You're safe. No, she said weakly. None of us are. They found me. Who? I already knew. My old coven. The words looked like they hurt to say. They've been looking for me. They found me through the protections I cast on Christine. I led them here. You couldn't have known. I should have, she said bitterly. The breaches, the attacks. They were watching how I would respond, and I gave them everything. Raphael appeared in the doorway, eyes like thunder. You three want to tell me why half my pack passed out, and my living room smells like burned air and secrets. Selene tried to sit up, but her body shook with the effort. It wasn't Crimson Howl. This is something worse. Then who? Raphael asked. My coven, the one that cast me out, the Elderwood Coven. He raised an eyebrow. Why would they care about us? They don't, she said. They care about me. What do they want from you? Her jaw clenched. She didn't answer. Kian watched her, this woman who always stood between everyone else and danger, and finally saw it. The loneliness, the exhaustion. They believe I have something that belongs to them, she said at last. Something powerful, and they'll destroy everything between them and me to take it. Then we fight, Raphael said simply. Selene's head snapped up. No, you don't understand. This isn't your battle. It is now, he said. I brought this on myself, she snapped, not the pack. Raphael crossed the room and stood over her. I don't care how long you've been carrying this alone. You're part of us. That makes this our fight. I don't want anyone else hurt because of me. He crouched eye level with her now. You don't get to decide that. Family stands together. You've been protecting all of us since the day you got here. Let us return the damn favor. Selene went still. For a long moment she didn't speak. Her throat worked as if swallowing words she didn't know how to say. Then her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Hope, and something even rarer. Belonging. She let out a slow, trembling breath. I've never had a family. You do now, Raphael said. And in that moment, even through the fear and the coming war, I saw something settle in her. Something fragile but real. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't wake the next day, or the day after. Whatever spell had touched her ran deep. Lyra said it didn't want her dead, just weakened, just waiting. So I waited with her. I never left her side, not for meals, not for sleep. I kept the fire burning through every night, whispered to her through every silence, wiped the sweat from her skin during each fevered spell. I'd thought I could ignore her, push her away, pretend I didn't need her. But now I knew the truth. She was mine, and I would burn down the world before I let them take her from me again.
Chapter 18. I woke to warmth and the scent of firewood, my body aching like it had been hollowed out and only half-stitched back together. The couch beneath me was unfamiliar, but the weight of a blanket tucked around my shoulders, the steady sound of a heartbeat nearby, those things grounded me. Kian sat in the chair beside me, eyes fixed on my face. Exhaustion clung to him like a second skin, but when he saw my eyes open, relief crashed through his expression like a breaking storm. You're awake, he breathed, voice hoarse. How long? My voice cracked. I felt brittle like glass. 3 days. His hand hovered near mine, not touching, asking permission. I nodded. His fingers closed around mine gently, and the contact sent heat surging through my cold limbs. You scared the hell out of me. I didn't answer, couldn't. The guilt hit first, then the memory, Morana, the spell, the silver light. I sat up too fast. Pain lanced through my skull, but I forced myself to move. I have work to do. Selene. No, I swung my legs over the side of the couch. My limbs trembled, weak from days of stillness, but I refused to stop. They're coming. We're not ready. You just woke up, he said, rising with me instantly, hands reaching out as though afraid I might collapse. Which means I've lost time. I steadied myself with one hand on the table. Where, Raphael, we need to reinforce the northern perimeter. I need to review the wards and teach the sentries how to detect cloaked movement. You need to rest. I need to protect them. Kian didn't argue again. He didn't try to stop me. But from that moment on, he didn't leave my side. He followed me to every ward line, every council meeting, every strategy session. Quiet, watchful, his presence like a shadow at my back, steady, calming, unshakable. He brought me water without being asked, took my spellbooks when my hands trembled, lifted me into his arms one night when I nearly collapsed and didn't put me down until I promised to sleep. He, who had once watched me with wary distance, now watched me like I was something fragile and sacred, like I mattered more than I had ever dared believe. By the third day of my recovery, the War Council had assembled around Raphael's table. Pack leaders, witches, allies, a growing force unified by one truth: war was coming. Maps and protection charms covered every surface. The room buzzed with tension. The northern ridge is our weakest point, Raphael was saying, tapping a worn map. If they come in force. They won't, I cut in. My voice didn't shake this time. That's not how the Elderwood Coven operates. They send small groups, strategic, surgical. Like they've been doing, Kian said quietly. He stood behind me, his hand resting on the back of my chair. His eyes, though calm, never strayed far from me. I nodded. Exactly. Every breach has been a test designed to study us. Our defenses, our reactions. They're not just attacking, they're learning. So we change the pattern, Luca offered. Rotate patrols, create unpredictability. It's a start, I allowed, but not enough. And yet you escaped them once, Diana said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. There must be a weakness. My throat tightened. I was lucky, young, desperate, and they didn't want to kill me, only bind me. Raphael frowned. And now? They want what they've always wanted, my power. And now I'm stronger than I was. That makes me a threat and a prize. Kian stiffened behind me. I felt his gaze like fire on the side of my face. What do they want to use it for? He asked. Power, I said. Control. They've always believed in supremacy through lineage, through blood. Lyra shifted beside me. There's more to it than that. Tell them. I hesitated, the weight of their eyes pressed down. The Elderwood Coven practices blood magic, not like I do, not offerings freely given. They take what they need. They believe certain bloodlines hold stronger magic. My mother, I said slowly, was one of the most powerful witches of her generation. Realization dawned in Raphael's eyes. They want to preserve the bloodline. I nodded. Through me, through any children I might bear. Kian's hands tightened on the chair, knuckles white, but his voice was like ice. That's not going to happen. No, I said, it's not. After the council disbanded, I fled to the clearing behind my cabin. The protection circle Kian and I had started still waited in the dirt, unfinished. I dropped to my knees and began carving the final runes, the killing ring, the last resort. Behind me, leaves rustled. Will it be enough? Kian's voice was low. I didn't look at him. It's the strongest protection I know. That's not what I asked. I finished the last rune, sat back on my heels. I don't know, Kian, I hope so. He stepped into the circle's edge. That stone you found at the breach, anything useful? I shook my head. It only confirmed that Morana has been watching me, planning this for years. His gaze bore into me. There's more. You're not telling us everything. I'm telling you enough. That's not the same. I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. The Coven has laws. One of them, no member can be forced to join. The magic only works if they choose it. He pieced it together. They can't drag you back. They need you to choose to return. I nodded. And if I don't, they'll use you, the pack, Christine, anyone I care about as leverage. His jaw tightened. So your plan is what? Hand yourself over? I didn't answer. He closed the space between us in a heartbeat, fury and fear radiating off him. No, we don't sacrifice our own. I'm not one of yours, I whispered. Yes, you are, he growled. You're one of mine. The words stopped me cold. He reached for me then, one hand on my cheek, the other rising to frame my face with impossible gentleness. You fight for everyone else, he said softly. Let someone fight for you. My eyes stung. No one had ever said that to me before. Not once. And then he leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. His breath was warm against my skin, his presence anchoring. Trust me, he murmured. I did.
Chapter 19. You're circling her like prey, Luca said, deadpan. I didn't stop sharpening my blade. I'm not circling. Raphael gave a short snort. Kian, you've been 2 steps behind her since she woke up. Even Iris noticed, and she's half blind without her glasses. She's not blind to this, Luca added, grinning. None of us are. I said nothing. She's your mate, isn't she? Raphael asked, voice lower now. Silence, the kind that pressed against the ribs like a storm about to break. Finally I answered, voice rough. Yes. The word sat heavy in the air. No hiding it anymore. No pretending I could ignore the way my wolf clawed toward her. The way my instincts bent toward her voice like a tether I never asked for but couldn't deny. It's about time, Raphael said, crossing his arms with a slow, approving nod. Honestly thought you were going to ruin it by being too stubborn. You still might, Luca added with a smirk, but at least now we can stop pretending you don't watch her breathe. I gave a quiet laugh, then looked up. You want the truths. Raphael sobered, always. I took a breath, like it would help carry the weight of what I'd never said aloud. I wasn't raised in a pack. My parents believed in being lone, strong, free, unbound by alpha or oath. They thought loyalty to anyone but blood was weakness. I stared into the forest, seeing what they couldn't. I had a brother, Dane, and a sister, Nara. They were everything good in the world. Bright, soft-hearted, always smiling. Too trusting, that was their mistake. A pause. There was a witch, she came when I was 14, said she was wounded. My parents let her stay the night, said it was strength, a test. But she didn't fight with blades or fire. She fought with smiles, with songs, with whispers. My voice went quiet, jagged. She marked them, my siblings, said she was giving them a gift. Dane started waking up screaming, tearing at himself like he was being burned from the inside. Nara, she forgot her name, spoke in voices that weren't hers. Luca looked away, Raphael didn't. My parents stood there like stone. They didn't know how to fight that kind of war, so I did what they wouldn't. I followed her, waited, and when her guard dropped, I killed her. Neither man said a word. It wasn't noble, it wasn't righteous. It was just me, bloody, desperate, feral, but it wasn't enough. Dane died a day later. Nara forgot me the next week. She's still alive, somewhere. My parents keep her locked away, like if they pretend she's not broken, it won't hurt. I clenched my fists. I couldn't stay, couldn't look at them and see what they let happen. And ever since, Raphael said quietly, you haven't trusted a witch. I nodded. And now Selene, Luca's voice was soft, you love her. I do, it wasn't hard to say, not anymore, and it terrifies me. Because she reminds you of everything you lost, Raphael said, stepping forward, and everything you still could. I met his eyes, yes. He clapped my shoulder, firm, steady. Good, that means it's real, now don't waste it. Luca grinned, we've got your back, even if she's scary as hell. I exhaled, something loosening in my chest. Thanks. Later that night. Midnight found me patrolling the eastern perimeter, every sense sharp as shattered glass. The air was crisp, too still. A hunter's moon glowed above, watchful and white. Lyra and 3 of her witches moved through the trees, reinforcing wards. I gave them a nod and continued forward, catching a scent that made my wolf rise fast and violent. Burnt sage, winter frost, magic. I signaled the pack, slipping into the undergrowth. Seconds later, 3 figures stepped into the clearing, 2 women and a man in elderwood cloaks. The tall woman smiled, eyes like knives. We expected the witch to send her pet. I kept my stance loose, neutral. Selene doesn't send me, I come on my own. Ah, she purred. First names, intimate. I am Morana, High Priestess of Elderwood. These are my acolytes. I didn't answer, just stared. Morana moved closer. We came to deliver a message. She tossed me a silver pendant, an intricate knot I'd seen in Selene's visions. I caught it, fingers closing hard around the metal. Tell Selene the Elderwood extends an invitation. Come home willingly, or be taken by force. And if she says no? The male acolyte sneered. Then the girl dies, the Alpha's daughter, first of many. Fury boiled up, a scream under my skin. My wolf pushed forward, teeth bared. You touch her, I said coldly, and your coven burns. Morana smiled. 3 days, the dark of the moon. Tell her family shouldn't stay apart. They vanished into the trees, magic folding around them. Back at the cabin, Selene waited on the porch, eyes dark with knowing. You met her, she said softly. I handed her the pendant. She said it's a reminder of who you were. Selene flinched. I burned that. She said the dark of the moon, 3 days. A ritual, Selene whispered, a binding. I stepped forward, look at me. She did. We're not giving you up. They'll hurt Christine. Then we fight. She shook her head. You don't know what they've done, what they're capable of. Then tell me. She led me into the woods, past the wards, to a stream where no ears could follow. There, under starlight, she told me everything, the prophecy, the night she escaped. They need my consent, she said, but if I won't give it, they'll twist me, threaten you, the pack, her. She looked away, guilty, maybe, or scared, but not fast enough. I stepped closer, heartbeat like a war drum, then we stopped them together. Her breath hitched. I can't lose you. You won't. I should have stepped back, should have let her breathe, but instead I reached for her, fingers curling under her chin, tilting her face toward mine. Her eyes widened, caught between shock and something deeper, something she hadn't let herself feel. I kissed her, no warning, no hesitation, just heat and heartache and the crackling electricity of something too long denied. She froze for a second, then answered like she'd been waiting her whole life. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and burning, she whispered, 3 days. I brushed my thumb along her cheek. 3 days to fight like hell, not to say goodbye.
Chapter 20. Dawn broke cold and clear on the 3rd day, the waning crescent moon a thin silver scar in the pale sky. By nightfall, it would vanish completely, the dark of the moon, when shadow magic reached its peak. When the Elderwood Coven would come for me. I stood at the edge of the protection circle Kian, and I had completed, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. Around the circle, members of my coven worked in grim silence, reinforcing the magic with their own strength. Beyond them, the pack patrolled in tight formation, a living barrier of fur and fang. At the center of it all stood Raphael's cabin, where Christine remained hidden, guarded by her parents and our strongest spells. The eastern ward is secured, Lyra reported, approaching with dirt-stained hands and shadows under her eyes. None of us had slept much in the past 3 days. The others are finishing the western boundary now. I nodded, scanning the tree line, and the summoning circle. Ready, she followed my gaze, understanding what I left unsaid. Are you sure about this, Selene? There's no going back once we begin. I'm sure, I turned to face her fully. If this fails... It won't, she interrupted fiercely. If it fails, I continued, get everyone out. Take Christine and run as far as you can. Her expression hardened. We're not abandoning you. You'll do as I say, I replied, my voice dropping to the tone I rarely used, the voice of a coven leader with no room for argument. That's an order, Lyra. She held my gaze for a long moment before giving a curt nod. Only if there's no other choice. It was the best I would get from her, and I knew it. As she walked away, I sensed him before I saw him, Kian, moving through the trees with silent grace. Our eyes met across the clearing, and the memory of our kiss 3 nights ago flared between us like a living thing. We'd barely had time alone since then, too busy planning, preparing, rallying our forces. But in quiet moments, his hand would find mine, his eyes would seek me out across crowded rooms. Small reminders that I wasn't fighting alone. Small promises of what might be, if we survived the night. "Everything's in place," he said as he reached me, voice low and intense. "Raphael's moved the younger wolves to the southern ridge. If things go badly, they have a clear escape route." I nodded, grateful for his thoroughness. "And Christine?" "Secure, Luca and Maddie are with her and her parents." His hand brushed mine, a gesture hidden from watching eyes. "It's time, Selene. Time for the final preparations. Time for goodbyes, just in case. Time to face the coven that had cast me out and now sought to chain me." I looked up at him, memorizing every detail of his face. The sharp angle of his jaw, the intensity of his eyes, the slight curve of his mouth that appeared only when he looked at me. "Kian, if this goes wrong." "It won't." His fingers intertwined with mine, squeezing gently. "If it does," I insisted, "promise me you'll protect them first. My coven, Christine, the pack. Don't waste time trying to save me." His expression darkened. "Don't ask that of me." "I have to." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "This is my fight, my past catching up to me. I won't have the blood of your pack on my hands." "Our pack," he corrected fiercely. "Our fight." His free hand came up to cup my cheek, and I don't make promises I can't keep. Before I could argue further, a sharp whistle cut through the air, the signal from our outermost scouts. My heart stuttered in my chest. "They're earlier than expected," I said, pulling reluctantly from his touch. "The moon hasn't set yet." Kian's expression turned grim. "Maybe they're not waiting for the dark of the moon." "Or maybe they're just toying with us," I replied, bitterness edging my words. "Trying to catch us off guard." As if summoned by our words, the air before us shimmered. Morana stepped through the distortion as if walking through a doorway, her silver hair gleaming in the fading light. Behind her came 6 others, all wearing the deep green robes of full coven members. My blood ran cold. 7 witches, the sacred number enough to form a complete circle. They hadn't come to negotiate. They'd come for war. "Selene," Morana's voice carried across the clearing, smooth and cold as winter ice. "I see you've prepared a welcome for us." I stepped forward, away from Kian's protective presence. "This is no welcome, Morana. This is a warning. Leave now while you still can." She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Such bravado from the girl who ran away. Her gaze shifted to Kian, then to the witches and wolves gathered behind us. "Have you told them what you are, what you could become in the right hands?" "I've told them enough." I kept my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my throat. "They know I won't be going with you." "A shame," she sighed, theatrically disappointed. "I had hoped you'd see reason." Around her, the other witches began to spread out, forming a loose semicircle. Magic crackled in the air between us, dark and hungry, reaching for mine like a living thing. "Last chance, Selene." Morana held out her hand, palm up. "Come willingly and your wolves and witches live. Refuse and we start with the child." Behind me, I heard Kian's low growl. Nearby, my coven members tensed, ready to defend. "You won't touch Christine," I said, power building in my veins, hot and fierce. "You won't touch any of them." Morana's smile turned cruel. "We already have." Horror washed through me as understanding dawned. I whirled toward Raphael's cabin just in time to see smoke begin to curl from beneath the door. Not natural fire, but witch smoke, designed to render its victims unconscious. "Now," I shouted, the signal we'd prepared for days. Everything happened at once. My coven sprang into action, activating the protective circles we'd drawn throughout the territory. Wolves burst from the tree line, circling the Elderwood witches in coordinated attack formation. Kian shifted beside me, his human form dissolving into the massive black wolf I'd seen only once before. And I reached for the power I'd been gathering since dawn, the magic I'd hidden deep within the earth beneath our feet. The clearing erupted into chaos. Spells flew like deadly arrows, met by counterspells from my coven. Wolves charged the enemy witches, dodging curses and hexes with practiced precision. We had trained for this, trained to fight magic with both tooth and spell. But we had underestimated Morana's power. With a single gesture, she sent 3 wolves flying backward, their bodies crashing into trees with sickening force. Another flick of her wrist, and a wall of green fire erupted between us and the cabin, cutting off our access to Christine. "Did you really think you could stand against us?" she called, her voice rising above the din of battle. "Against magic that has existed for centuries." I forced my way through the fighting, focusing my power on breaking through her fire wall. Kian ran alongside me, his massive form a shadow at my flank. "Get to Christine," I shouted to him over the roar of magic and wolf snarls. "I'll handle Morana." For once, he didn't argue, peeling away toward the cabin, searching for a weakness in the barrier. I faced Morana across the clearing, drawing on every ounce of power I possessed. The earth beneath us trembled as our magic collided, hers ancient and cold, mine wild and fierce. "You've grown stronger," she acknowledged, real surprise flickering across her face. "Good, all the more valuable you'll be to us." "I will never be yours," I growled, pushing back against her spell with everything I had. Around us, the battle raged. My coven fought valiantly, but they were outmatched by the Elderwood witches' centuries of dark knowledge. One by one, I saw them falter, fall back, struggle to maintain their positions. And the wolves, brave, loyal, fierce, they were being driven back by magic they couldn't fight, couldn't understand. We were losing. I caught a glimpse of Kian, still fighting to reach the cabin, blood matting his dark fur. Beyond him, Raphael and several others had broken through a side window, working to evacuate those trapped inside. Then I heard it, a child's scream, high and terrified, cutting through the chaos. "Christine." My focus shattered, and Morana's spell slammed into me with the force of a battering ram. I flew backward, landing hard on the unforgiving ground, the breath knocked from my lungs. "Selene," Lyra's voice, desperate and afraid, somewhere to my right. I struggled to my feet, blood trickling from a cut above my eye. Through the haze of pain, I saw what had happened, what was happening. 2 of Morana's acolytes had broken through our defenses. They stood at the cabin's door, and between them, struggling in their grip, was Christine, her small face white with terror, her parents nowhere in sight. "No," the cry tore from my throat, raw and agonized. Kian launched himself at the witches, a black blur of fury and fangs. One of them turned, gesturing sharply, and he crashed to the ground, trapped in some invisible binding. Morana appeared beside me, unruffled despite the battle around us. "It's over, Selene. Choose, the child's life or your precious independence." Time seemed to slow as I looked around the clearing. My coven members, battered and overwhelmed. The pack, fighting with desperate courage against an enemy they couldn't hope to defeat. Kian, struggling against magical bonds, his wolf eyes fixed on mine with a promise he couldn't keep. And Christine, small and terrified, innocent of the sins that had brought this moment to pass. I had known, from the moment Morana appeared 3 days ago, what my choice would be. I had always known. "Stop," I commanded, my voice carrying across the clearing with supernatural force. "Stop." To my surprise, the fighting paused, both sides freezing at the power in my voice. "Let her go," I said, my eyes fixed on Christine's captors. "Let her go, and I'll come willingly." "Selene, no." Lyra's anguished cry cut through the sudden silence. Morana's smiled, triumph gleaming in her cold eyes. "Swear it. Swear on your power that you'll return to the Elderwood, that you'll submit to our rituals, our rules." From the corner of my eye, I saw Kian thrashing more violently against his bonds, a desperate howl building in his throat. "First," I countered, straightening despite the pain racking my body. "You swear. Swear on your coven's bloodline that no harm will come to anyone here after I'm gone. Not the wolves, not my witches, not the child. Swear they'll be left in peace." She considered me for a long moment, calculation in her gaze. "Very well. I swear by the blood of our ancestors that no harm will come to your pets once you're safely back where you belong." I nodded once, my decision made. "Then I swear by my power, by the blood of Morwen that flows in my veins, that I will return to the Elderwood Coven. I will submit to your rituals. I will be bound." The words felt like chains closing around my throat, heavy and final. Morana smiled, extending her hand. "Then come, daughter of Morwen, your family awaits." I took one last look around. At the home I'd built, the family I'd found, the love I'd only just begun to understand. My eyes found Kian's, and I poured everything I couldn't say into that final gaze. "Forgive me, remember me, live." Then I placed my hand in Morana's, and the world dissolved around us, replaced by the cold embrace of shadow magic. As we vanished, I heard Kian's howl, a sound of such raw anguish that it followed me into the darkness, a final reminder of everything I had sacrificed to save them. Everything I had lost.
Chapter 21. The howl tore from my throat, primal and broken as she vanished, my mate, gone in a heartbeat of shadow and sacrifice. The magical bonds holding me snapped as Morana's spell completed, but the freedom came too late. Always too late. I shifted back to human form, uncaring of the eyes on me, the whispers, the chaos left in the wake of battle. My hands shook as I stared at the empty space where Selene had stood, where she'd looked at me one last time with eyes that said goodbye. Kian, Raphael's hand on my shoulder, firm and steady. "Get inside, now." I didn't move, couldn't. "Now," he repeated, voice sharper, "you're bleeding, and we need to regroup." Blood, I looked down, finally noticing the deep gash across my ribs, the wounds on my arms. I didn't feel them. Couldn't feel anything but the hollow ache where she should be. Inside the cabin, chaos reigned. Christine sobbed in her mother's arms while Maddie checked her for injuries. Injured wolves lined the walls, being tended by the remaining witches. The scent of blood, magic, and fear hung thick in the air. I stood in the doorway, searching faces. "Where's Lyra?" Here, she emerged from a back room, her face ashen, a grimoire clutched to her chest. "I need to talk to you, alone." I followed her onto the back porch, away from listening ears. The night air bit cold against my skin, but I welcomed the pain. At least it was something. "We have to move now," Lyra said without preamble, her voice tight with urgency. "Tonight." My jaw clenched. "You know where they took her?" She nodded grimly. "The Elderwood Sanctum. I can find it, track her magical signature. Their wards are strong, but I know how they work." A flash of determination crossed her face. "I was trained by the same coven before I left." "Can you break through them?" I asked, the faintest spark of hope igniting in my chest. "Not alone," she admitted, "but with the coven's help, yes, we can create a temporary breach." Her eyes met mine, hard with resolve. "But we have to hurry. The binding ritual needs the dark of the moon, midnight at the latest, if they complete it." "She'll be theirs forever," I finished, the words like poison. I stared at the night sky where the moon should be, the absence like the hollow in my chest. Something inside me snapped, not broke, hardened, crystallized into purpose. "How long?" I asked, my voice rough. Lyra swallowed. "The binding ritual requires the dark of the moon. It won't be complete until midnight." 6 hours. Less, the preparation begins earlier, if they've already started. I clenched my fists, the ache of my wounds nothing compared to the fire burning in my blood. "Then we don't waste time." When I walked back into the cabin, something in my expression must have changed. Silence fell like a physical weight. "We're going after her," I announced, not a question but a statement of fact. "Tonight." Raphael stepped forward. "Half our pack is injured, the witches are drained, we're not in fighting shape." "I'm not asking the pack," I said, meeting his eyes steadily. "I'm telling you what I'm doing." "It is risky," he replied bluntly. "Yes." Luca pushed off from the wall he'd been leaning against. "Hell of a thing, finding your mate only to lose her." He glanced at Maddie, his expression softening. "Count me in." "And me?" Raphael sighed, resignation and determination warring in his voice. "But we do this smart, not suicidal." Lyra stepped forward. "My coven stands with you. She is our leader, our sister." One by one the others joined, wolves and witches alike, battered but unbowed, united in purpose, in loyalty. In love for the woman who'd sacrificed everything for them. I nodded once, throat tight, then we plan, fast. As the others gathered around maps and grimoires, I stepped outside, needing air, space to think. The moon had vanished completely now, the sky a canvas of stars with no centerpiece. The dark of the moon, when shadows ruled. When Selene would be bound to the coven that had hunted her, used her, feared her power. I pressed my fist against the cabin wall, pain flaring through my knuckles. The memory of her kiss burned on my lips. The sound of her voice echoed in my head, "I can't lose you." But I'd lost her, and the knowledge of it clawed at me like poison. Inside, plans were forming. Lyra and her witches had drawn a complex tracking circle on the floor. Raphael and Luca were cleaning weapons, checking ammunition. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it was war. "I can track her magical signature," Lyra explained, kneeling beside the circle. "But once we're inside, we'll be vulnerable. Their magic is old, powerful." "So is ours," Rowan, her second-in-command, countered, different but no less strong. I watched them prepare, a strange calm settling over me. The pain of my wounds faded to background noise, eclipsed by singular focus. "Find Selene, bring her home." Chapter 22. The Elderwood Sanctum materialized from the mist like something from a nightmare, ancient stone and twisted roots forming a structure that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. Massive trees with bark black as coal surrounded it, their branches creating a canopy so dense that not even starlight penetrated. "Cheery place," Luca muttered beside me, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Don't," Raphael whispered, catching his wrist. "Normal weapons won't work here, we follow the plan." The plan, simple in theory. Lyra and her witches would create a breach in the wards. Raphael, Luca, and I would enter, find Selene, and get her out while the witches maintained the opening. Simple, if not for the dozen or more powerful witches waiting inside. Lyra knelt at the edge of the invisible barrier, her fingers tracing symbols in the air. 4 other witches formed a semicircle behind her, their hands linked, lips moving in silent incantation. "There," she whispered finally, her face drained of color as a shimmer appeared in the air before us. "We've created a passage, but it won't hold long. 10 minutes, maybe less." I nodded, the wolf inside me clawing for release. "Stay safe, if the breach starts to close." "We'll hold it as long as we can," she interrupted, her eyes fierce. "Find her." No more words needed. The 3 of us slipped through the opening, the air crackling against our skin as we crossed the threshold. Inside, the sanctum was eerily silent. Too silent. No guards, no alarms. Just stone corridors illuminated by strange blue flames that cast no heat. "They're not expecting visitors," Raphael observed in a low voice. "Or they are, and this is a trap," Luca countered. I closed my eyes, focusing on the bond that had formed between Selene and me from the moment we met. It was fragile, new, but real. A tether that even now pulled me forward. "This way," I murmured, following the invisible thread. We moved through the corridors like shadows, every sense on high alert. Twice we ducked into alcoves as robed figures passed, their faces hidden by hoods, their hands glowing with faint green light. The pull led us deeper, down winding stairs that seemed to descend into the very heart of the earth. The air grew colder, charged with power that made my skin prickle, and my wolf rise closer to the surface. "Ceremonial chamber," Raphael guessed, his voice barely audible, underground, away from interference. A distant chanting reached us, many voices speaking in an ancient language I didn't recognize but instinctively feared. The sound of it made my blood run cold. "They've started," I growled, the words barely human. We rounded a corner and found ourselves facing a massive stone doorway, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and move as if alive. Beyond it, the chanting grew louder, interspersed with a single voice that rose above the others, cold, commanding. "Morana." "Kian," Raphael warned quietly, "we need a plan." But the wolf inside me had caught a scent, Selene's scent, tinged with something wrong, something that made every protective instinct flare to life. Fear, pain, blood. Without conscious thought, I shifted, the transformation faster and more violent than I'd ever experienced. Bone and muscle rearranged, fur exploded across my skin, and the world sharpened into predator's clarity. I heard Raphael curse, Luca's surprised intake of breath. Then I was charging forward, slamming into the stone doors with supernatural force. They burst open with a sound like thunder, and I found myself in a vast circular chamber. A dozen hooded figures stood around a raised dais, their hands extended toward the center where Selene. She lay unconscious on a stone altar, her skin deathly pale, arms extended and bound with silver chains that glowed with malevolent green light. Dark symbols had been painted on her skin in what smelled unmistakably like blood. And standing over her, a ritual dagger raised high, was Morana, her silver hair unbound, her face transformed with power and triumph. Time seemed to slow. I saw her eyes widen as they met mine, saw her lips curl in a snarl of outrage. The dagger began its downward arc towards Selene's heart. I leapt, a black blur of fury and fangs, clearing the circle of witches in a single bound. My jaws closed around Morana's wrist as my weight slammed into her, sending us both crashing to the ground beside the altar. The dagger clattered away, skidding across stone as chaos erupted. Raphael and Luca burst into the chamber behind me, shifted into their wolf forms, grey and russet blurs that tore through the circle of witches with terrible efficiency. Morana screamed, not in pain but in rage, as her free hand pressed against my chest. Magic exploded from her palm, sending me flying backward into a stone pillar with bone-crushing force. "Fool," she snarled, rising to her feet. "You're too late, the binding has begun." I struggled to my feet, ribs cracking as they healed, vision swimming. Through the haze of pain, I saw her reclaim the dagger, saw her turn back towards Selene with deadly purpose. "The daughter of Morwen returns to her bloodline tonight," she called out, her voice carrying over the sounds of battle. "Her power joins with ours." Daughter of Morwen, the words penetrated my pain-fogged mind like shards of ice. Morana was Selene's mother. I launched myself forward again, but invisible bonds seized me mid-leap, holding me suspended in the air. Around the chamber, I saw Raphael and Luca similarly immobilized, struggling against magic they couldn't fight. Morana turned to me, her smile cruel. "Watch, wolf, watch as I claim what has always been mine." She raised the dagger once more, the blade gleaming in the eerie light. 7 of the hooded figures had regrouped, forming a tight circle around the altar, their chanting rising to a crescendo. "Blood of my blood," Morana intoned, pressing the tip of the dagger to Selene's chest just above her heart. "Power of my line, return to the fold, be bound to our will. Be." "No!" The voice cracked through the chamber like lightning, Selene's voice, her eyes flying open, blazing with silver fire. The chains binding her wrists shattered in an explosion of light, and she surged upward, her hand closing around Morana's throat. "Not your blood," she snarled, power radiating from her in waves that made the very air shudder. "Not your power." The magical bonds holding me dissolved as Morana's concentration broke, and I dropped to the floor. Around the chamber, the remaining witches scattered, their formation broken, their spell disrupted. Selene rose from the altar, her movements fluid despite the symbols etched into her skin. Magic crackled around her like a storm, wild and furious and beautiful. Morana staggered back, real fear flashing across her face for the first time. "You cannot defy the Coven, the bloodline." "The bloodline ends with me," Selene cut her off. "You are not my mother. You are nothing but a thief who tried to steal what was never yours." Understanding dawned, not mother by birth, but by dark magic, by blood ritual and stolen power. But Morana wasn't finished. With a shriek of rage, she flung out her hand, sending a bolt of green fire hurtling not toward Selene, but toward me. I braced for impact, for pain, but it never came. Selene appeared between us, her palm raised, the spell shattering against an invisible shield. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice eerily calm despite the power raging around her. "You will not touch any of them ever again." She stepped forward and Morana retreated, genuine terror replacing her anger. "Selene," I called, finding my human voice again. "She's not worth it." For a moment, she hesitated, glancing back at me over her shoulder. In that instant of distraction, Morana struck, the ritual dagger flashing as she lunged forward with inhuman speed. I moved without thinking, shifting back to wolf mid-leap, intercepting her attack with tooth and claw. We crashed to the ground in a tangle of fury and magic, her screams piercing as my jaws closed around her throat. One sharp twist, the taste of blood, a final gurgling cry. Silence fell across the chamber. I shifted back to human form, breathing hard, Morana's lifeless body crumpled at my feet. Around us, the remaining Elderwood witches had either fled or been subdued by Raphael and Luca. I turned to Selene, expecting horror, revulsion, but found only relief in her eyes as she swayed on her feet. Kian, she whispered, her voice breaking on my name. I reached her just as her knees buckled, gathering her into my arms as the last of her strength gave out. I've got you, I murmured against her hair. I've got you. She pressed her face into my neck, her breath warm against my skin, alive, whole mine. We need to go, Raphael called urgently. More will come. I lifted Selene effortlessly, cradling her against my chest. Can you walk? She nodded weakly. I'm not, completely drained, just, they drugged me. Stay close, I told her, setting her carefully on her feet but keeping my arm firmly around her waist. Together we fled the sanctum, leaving death and broken magic in our wake.
Chapter 23. I woke to the scent of pine and wood smoke, a heavy blanket tucked around me, and the distant murmur of familiar voices. For a moment, disorientation gripped me. The last clear memory I had was of Morana's cold smile as she pressed the dagger to my chest, beginning a ritual that would have bound me forever. Then light, pain, freedom, Kian. I sat up abruptly, wincing as my head spun. I was in a small cabin, rustic but clean, the walls lined with shelves of dried herbs and crystals. A witch's sanctuary, but not one I recognized. Easy, came a soft voice from the doorway. You've been unconscious for nearly a day. Lyra stepped into the room, carrying a steaming mug that smelled of valerian and chamomile. She looked exhausted but relieved, dark circles beneath her eyes. Where are we? I asked, accepting the tea with grateful hands. One of my safe houses, about 50 miles from the Elderwood territory. She sat beside me on the edge of the bed. How much do you remember? I closed my eyes, fragments of memory shifting like kaleidoscope pieces. Morana, the binding ritual, I was fighting the drugs, trying to stay conscious. Then, Kian, my eyes flew open. Is he? Alive, she assured me quickly. They all are, a few injuries, nothing serious. Relief washed through me, so intense it made my hands tremble. Morana. Dead, Lyra's voice was flat, unburdened by grief. Kian killed her when she tried to stab you. I nodded slowly, processing this. There should have been grief, perhaps. She had claimed to be my mother, after all. But I felt nothing but hollow relief. Whatever blood we might have shared, she had become a monster long ago. And the others? Most fled when they saw their leader fall. A few were injured. None were killed. I sipped the tea, letting its warmth spread through me. The binding. Incomplete, she smiled faintly. You broke free before the final seal could be placed. Whatever power they tried to harness, it's still yours. I looked down at my arms, noticing for the first time that the ritual markings had been carefully cleaned away. Only faint red lines remained, already fading. You should rest, Lyra continued, rising. Your strength will return faster if you... Where is he? I interrupted, setting aside the mug. She didn't pretend not to understand. Outside, he's been patrolling since we arrived. Won't rest, won't leave. I pushed the blankets aside, ignoring the dizziness as I stood. I need to see him. Lyra nodded, understanding in her eyes. There are clean clothes in the trunk. I'll give you some privacy. She slipped out, leaving me to dress slowly, testing limbs that felt heavy and disconnected. The simple cotton dress was loose and comfortable, a blessing against skin still sensitive from the ritual. I made my way through the small cabin, nodding to Rowan and the others who looked up as I passed. Raphael gave me a respectful nod from where he sat cleaning a wicked-looking blade. Luca winked, gesturing toward the back door with a knowing smile. The evening air was cool on my face as I stepped onto the porch, the setting sun painting the forest in gold and amber. And there, at the edge of the trees, stood Kian, back to me, shoulders tense, every line of his body radiating vigilance. You're supposed to be resting, he said without turning, his voice rumbling low across the space between us. So are you. He turned then, and the expression on his face stole my breath. Relief and fear and something deeper, something raw and vulnerable that made my heart ache. You're awake, he said simply, as if it were a miracle. Thanks to you. I crossed the distance between us, each step steadier than the last. When I reached him, I raised my hand to his face, tracing the line of his jaw, the curve of his cheek, reassuring myself that he was real, that we were both alive. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered, his voice breaking on the words. "Never," I promised, though we both knew it was a promise neither of us had the right to make. "Kian." "I killed her," he interrupted, his eyes darkening. "I would do it again, for you." "I know." I leaned into him, forehead pressed against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Thank you." His arms came around me, tentative at first, then fierce, as if he could keep me safe through will alone. I melted into his embrace, the last of the tension draining from my body. "I'm sorry," he murmured against my hair. "I should have protected you better, should have stopped them from taking you." I pulled back enough to look up at him. "Don't, you came for me, that's what matters." The memory of his wolf form crashing through the ritual chamber, his fury and determination. It was burned into my mind, a moment of perfect clarity amid the haze of drugs and magic. "I will always come for you," he said fiercely. "Always." Something in his voice, in the intensity of his gaze, made me catch my breath. "Kian." "I love you," the words tumbled out, rough and urgent. "I should have told you before, should have said it when I first knew, but I was afraid." I smiled, tears welling unexpectedly. The fearless wolf afraid. "Terrified," he admitted, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. "Of this, of feeling, of losing you." "You won't lose me," I whispered, rising on tiptoe to press my lips to his. "I love you too." He kissed me then, not gentle, not hesitant, but with the full force of everything we'd both been holding back. Months of tension and longing poured into a single point of contact, his lips on mine, his hands in my hair, my fingers clutching at his shoulders. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, the last light of day had faded into twilight. Stars were beginning to appear overhead, brilliant in the clear night sky. "We should go back," he said reluctantly, his forehead resting against mine. "The others will worry." I smiled, mischief replacing exhaustion. "Let them worry a little longer." His answering smile was slow, heated. "Selene." "Take me somewhere," I interrupted, suddenly certain. "Just us, just tonight." He studied my face for a long moment, as if memorizing every detail. Then he nodded, taking my hand in his. "I know a place," he said simply. We walked deeper into the forest, away from the cabin and watchful eyes. Neither of us spoke, content in the shared silence, in the solid warmth of hands clasped together. The small clearing appeared almost by magic, a perfect circle of soft grass surrounded by ancient trees, a small stream gurgling nearby. Above, the stars shone impossibly bright, the waxing crescent moon casting silver light. "Beautiful," I breathed. "Yes," he agreed, but when I turned, he was looking only at me.
Chapter 24. 2 months later, the main house of the territory stood complete, a sprawling structure of stone and timber that merged seamlessly with the forest around it, large enough to accommodate both pack and coven needs, with a great hall for gatherings, a ritual space for the witches, and private quarters for each of us. A home just as Selene had wished. I stood on the back deck, watching as Christine chased fireflies across the wide lawn, her laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Nearby, Lyra and Raphael argued good-naturedly over the best location for a greenhouse, while Luca and Maddie set up tables for the evening meal. Peace, not perfect, not without its challenges, but real. "There you are," came the voice that still made my heart skip like a lovesick pup's, hiding from dinner duty. I turned, drinking in the sight of her. Selene, dressed simply in jeans and one of my sweaters, her hair loose around her shoulders, eyes bright with happiness and mischief. "Strategic retreat," I corrected, pulling her into my arms. Rowan threatened bodily harm if I didn't stop sampling the stew. She laughed, stretching up to press a kiss to my jaw. Smart wolf. I buried my face in her hair, breathing in her scent, herbs and magic and home. How was the perimeter check? "Quiet, the new wards are holding perfectly." She leaned back to meet my eyes, no sign of any Elderwood activity since. Since that night, since Morana's death and the Coven's scattering. "Good," I kissed her forehead, letting my lips linger there, though part of me almost wishes they'd try something. Bloodthirsty, she teased, but her eyes reflected the same fierce protectiveness. We'd learned in the weeks following our escape that Morana had indeed claimed to be Selene's mother, but it had been a lie built on stolen blood and corrupted ritual. The truth, pieced together from Coven records Lyra had retrieved, was both simpler and more painful. Selene had been born to a powerful witch outside the Elderwood, a woman named Ariana who had refused to join their ranks despite their repeated demands. When Selene was barely a year old, Morana had led an attack that killed Ariana, intending to take the infant whose power she had already sensed. "What are you thinking about?" Selene asked, her fingers tracing the furrow between my brows. "How lucky I am," I answered honestly. How close I came to losing everything because I was too stubborn to see what was right in front of me. She smiled, the smile that still made my chest tight. "We're both lucky and stubborn." "A perfect match," I agreed, bending to kiss her properly. A chorus of wolf whistles and good-natured jeers erupted from the lawn, where the pack and Coven had begun to gather for dinner. We broke apart, laughing, to find Christine making exaggerated gagging noises. "Gross," she called, though her grin belied her words. "You won't think so in about 10 years, Raphael called back, earning himself an elbow from his mate. "Don't give her ideas," Maddie warned, though she was smiling too. This was our life now, teasing, laughter, the comfortable chaos of family. Not the blood family I'd lost or the one that had failed Selene, but the one we'd chosen. Built, protected. "Come on," Selene tugged at my hand. "Food's getting cold." I followed her down to the gathering, where Rowan was ladling stew into bowls and passing out thick slices of fresh bread. Everyone was here, pack members and witches alike, no longer separate groups but a unified whole. Different strengths, different abilities, but bound by choice and loyalty. As we took our seats at the long trestled table, Raphael rose, lifting his glass. "A toast," he announced, "to the most stubborn wolf and the most terrifying witch I've ever met." He grinned at our matching glares, "and to the home they've helped us build." "To home," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Under the table, Selene's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "To us," she whispered, for my ears alone. "To us," I agreed and sealed it with a kiss.
Chapter 25. 1 year later. The full moon hung low and heavy in the night sky, bathing the meadow in silver light as I completed the final preparations for the ritual. Around me, my coven moved with quiet purpose, setting crystals at the cardinal points, lighting candles that flickered like stars against the darkness. "Everything's ready," Lyra said, approaching with a bundle of herbs freshly cut for the occasion. "The pack is waiting at the edge of the clearing." I nodded, feeling a flutter of nerves despite my certainty. "Send them in. It's time." She squeezed my hand once before turning away, her footsteps silent on the dew-damp grass. A year since we'd escaped the Elderwood sanctum. A year of building, healing, growing stronger together. A year of waking up in Kian's arms, of teaching Christine simple spells, of blending two worlds that had once been separate. A year of peace, hard-won and fiercely protected. The wolves entered the clearing in human form, led by Raphael and Luca. Behind them came the rest of the pack, faces solemn for once, understanding the importance of what we were about to do. And at the rear, walking alone, was Kian, my mate, my heart, the other half of my soul. His eyes found mine across the space between us, and the world narrowed to just him, just us. "Tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly in the stillness, "we formalize what we have already become in truth. One community, one family, bound by choice rather than blood or obligation." I turned to my coven, standing in a semicircle to my right. The witches of Ravencrest Coven offer their magic, their wisdom, their protection to the pack. Then to the wolves on my left. The wolves of Nightshade offer their strength, their loyalty, their fierce hearts to the coven. Lyra stepped forward, carrying a silver bowl filled with water from the sacred spring that ran beneath our territory. Each member of both groups approached in turn, adding a drop of blood to the water, freely given, a symbol of the bond we were creating. When the bowl returned to me, I held it up toward the moon, watching as the liquid caught the light, shimmering with power and promise. "By water and blood, by moon and earth, by choice and love," I intoned, "we bind ourselves together, no longer separate, no longer apart. From this night forward, we are one." I drank from the bowl, then passed it to Kian, who did the same before passing it to Raphael, Lyra, and so on through our assembled family. As the last person drank, a wind swept through the clearing, cool and fragrant with pine and wild herbs. The candles flared higher, then settled into steady flames, and a sense of rightness, of completion, settled over us all. It was done. What had begun in fear and suspicion a year ago had transformed into something beautiful, something lasting. Later, as the celebration wound down and people drifted back toward the main house, Kian found me sitting by the small pond at the edge of the property, watching the moon's reflection dance on the rippling surface. "There you are," he said, settling beside me on the grassy bank, "hiding from your own party." I smiled, leaning into his warmth. "Just taking a moment. It's been a good night." "A perfect night," he corrected, pressing a kiss to my temple. We sat in comfortable silence, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting against him. In the distance, I could hear laughter and music from the house, our people. "I have something for you," he said after a while, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. I looked up surprised. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small pouch of soft leather. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Tonight feels right." My heart stuttered as he placed the pouch in my palm. I opened it carefully, tipping the contents into my hand. A ring, simple and beautiful, a band of twisted silver set with a single moonstone that caught the light like a captured star. "Kian," I breathed, unable to find more words. "I know we're already mated," he said, taking the ring and holding it poised at the tip of my finger. "The wolf in me claimed you long ago, but the man wants to marry you, Selene, to stand before our people and promise forever in every human way I can." Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, then lifted my hand to his lips. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," I managed, laughing through my tears. "Always yes." His kiss was gentle, reverent, so different from our first frantic embraces, yet carrying the same fire, the same certainty. He was mine, and I was his, and the future stretched before us like an open road. That night, as we lay tangled together in our bed, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I thought of all the paths that had led us here. The choices, the mistakes, the sacrifices, the victories. "What are you thinking?" he murmured, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder. I smiled, pressing a kiss to the warm skin over his heart. That I wouldn't change a thing, not one moment of our journey. Not even the part where I was a stubborn, suspicious ass for months. "Not even that," I assured him. "It made this." I lifted my hand, the ring catching the moonlight streaming through our window, all the sweeter. His arms tightened around me, protective even in sleep. "I love you, witch." "I love you, wolf," I whispered back, letting my eyes close, secure in the knowledge that whatever came next, we would face it together. No longer predator and prey, no longer separate, no longer alone. Just us, just love, just home. Epilogue. I moved toward him slowly, deliberately. No fear, no hesitation, just certainty. My hands found the hem of his shirt, pushing it up and over his head. His skin was warm beneath my fingertips, smooth over hard muscle. "Are you sure?" he asked roughly, his hands settling on my waist with careful restraint. I answered by slipping the straps of my dress from my shoulders, letting the cotton pool at my feet. His sharp intake of breath was all the answer I needed. "I have never been more sure of anything," I told him, stepping into the circle of his arms. What followed was a dance as old as time, tender at first, then urgent. His hands and mouth explored every inch of me, reverent and possessive. I returned the favor, learning the planes and angles of him, the places that made him growl low in his throat. When he finally moved above me, our bodies joining in the most primal way, stars exploded behind my eyelids. I cried out his name, and he answered with mine, a call and response, a promise and a claiming. Wolf and witch, predator and prey, protector and protected, All the boundaries between us dissolved in that sacred space, leaving only truth, only love. Hours later, wrapped in his arms beneath a blanket of stars, I traced idle patterns on his chest, content in a way I'd never known before. "What happens now?" I asked softly. His arms tightened around me. "What do you want to happen?" I pushed up on one elbow, looking down at his face. So open now, so unlike the closed, suspicious man I'd first met. "I want a home," I said simply. "With you, with our pack, our coven, together." He smiled, that rare, transformative smile that changed his entire face. "Then that's what you'll have, what we'll build." "Just like that?" I asked, unable to keep the wonder from my voice. His fingers traced the curve of my cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with a tenderness that made my heart ache. "Just like that. The wolf in me recognized you from the beginning, fought it, denied it, but knew. You're my mate, Selene, my home." I laid my head back on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "And you're mine." We stayed like that, tangled together under the stars, until the chill of night finally drove us to gather our clothes. As we dressed, I glanced up to find him watching me, his eyes dark with an emotion that made heat pool low in my belly. "We should head back," I said reluctantly. "They'll be worried." He nodded, pulling me close for one more kiss, gentle this time, a promise rather than a demand. "Tomorrow, we build our future. Tonight," he grinned, suddenly boyish, "tonight we face the knowing looks." I laughed, the sound light and carefree in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I think we can survive that." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the cabin, toward our makeshift family of wolves and witches who had risked everything to save me, to save us. The future, whatever it might hold, could wait until morning.